everyone, and welcome to Criticast. Today, I'm going to be showing you guys for episode 0 what's going to be happening on the podcast, what we're going to be doing here, and introducing you guys to myself and the other hosts of Criticast. Criticast is a show where 2+ music critics, journalists, and YouTubers talk about a specific album, maybe even with a guest. We cover all genres and we all have backgrounds in music reviewing. But before I introduce you guys to the other hosts of the show, let me introduce myself. My name is Sam Bennett and I have a YouTube channel where I talk about, review, and commentate on music. I have always had a great appreciation for music, and I also play drums and guitar. I dabble in other instruments, but I mostly stick to those. In my reviews, I try to give honest opinions about almost all genres: rock, metal, jazz, hip-hop, and pop. Experimental too, don't forget that. I also have a podcast where I interview other musicians, critics, and YouTubers, but I will be putting that one on hold for now so I can focus on this grab. Now that we got that out of the way, let's move on to our first host. Hey guys, we are here with Noah of SMEB Reviews. Noah, can you introduce yourself?
Well, hello, I'm Noah. I like Sam said, I run SMEB Reviews, where I do about 2 album reviews a week. Usually I try to diversify and talk about a lot of genres, but I definitely do have that more indie, alternative, and pop lean in my content. Besides that, I don't do much else. I do want to try to start doing more like top 10 lists as we get into 2019, but that remains to be seen.
So like what type of music are you into? Like, one of your favorite artists of all time?
I really like a lot of that new wave synthesizer music. It's something that's always really resonated with me. Bleachers is by far my favorite artist. Not necessarily a critical darling, but hey, I will defend them to the end of the earth. As well as like Billy Joel, U2. Those are 2 bigger acts I'm really into. But like I said, it really does come down to, I really do like that 80s new wave sound, both the more recent revival that we're seeing with a lot of pop artists taking that more 80s sound, as well as just the original 80s music.
So like artists like Bleachers, as you said, the 1975, doing a little bit of that. You are a fan of that movement?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I definitely think that currently the market's becoming a little saturated with a lot of that sound, but honestly, I still feel like there's a lot of interesting ideas that are being touched on in the genre. And I don't think that we're done. Yes, there's obviously some people that are just making it as quickly and as easily as possible. But artists like Bleachers and the 1975 are creating different and interesting things within that genre.
So Noah, do you have any background as a musician?
Yeah, I've played guitar for a decent portion of my life. I'd say 10 years might be a guess, but that's really just a guess. As well as piano. I've definitely strayed away from guitar and really do like to focus on piano now. But I love playing music. I actually, I'm a music instructor, and I teach a couple different kids music. So yes, I love playing music myself.
Does that influence your reviews a lot? Does that, like just the musician's insight that you have, does that help you craft a thought-out review?
I feel like sometimes it can, but not always, only because I self-taught myself piano, and my guitar instructor never was really the music theory kind of teacher. So I don't have a lot of that, like, while I know it now, I didn't have as strong of a foundation in time signatures and keys and all of that kind of thing. I more just understand how to play it. So no, I don't feel like it often comes into play because I can't go, wow, this is a really advanced time signature, because it's not something that I've ever really focused on in my own studies.
And you never like review like the most complicated like technical stuff anyway, so like it never really comes into play.
Yeah, I definitely like to. It's not that not that pop is necessarily my favorite genre, but I feel like it has. I like to review things that are popular, not for the views, but because I feel like there's a lot of interesting dialogue going around that stuff. When you have an artist that's not necessarily in the mainstream and doesn't have a lot of press coverage, so you don't really know their personalities, all you can take it on is face value. Whereas if I was to review, let's say, Taylor Swift's album, there's a lot of personality that comes with the individual artist. So I think that that's why I kind of lean towards some more mainstream artists in a lot of my reviews, because I do get to dissect them as an individual and how their motivations affect their music.
Is there anybody in the music industry, whether it be in journalism, in reviewing, in just like the actual musicians, is there anybody that you look up to and, you know, maybe aspire to be on that level or take a lot of inspiration from?
I have a lot of inspirations. To keep the list short, Jack Antonoff, obviously, of Bleachers. While, yes, I'm the poster boy for Jack Antonoff, I do have to say that he has such a way with the English language that is completely inspiring to me in the way that he can craft stories and just tell a very emotional story. And that just, his use of the English language is absolutely poignant and beautiful. And I've always loved his songwriting style. In the music review field, I have a lot of people that I definitely enjoy and think are very talented reviewers. One that comes to mind, Spectrum Pulse, has always been a big influence of mine, just because I feel like he's another person who has a really good command of the English language. And I think that I have such respect for people that know their way around language and don't just stick to the most simplistic form of talking, writing, speaking.
For some reason, I've noticed this thing a lot of the time around kids my age. I've never understood this phenomenon, but for some reason, it's a bad thing to use big words. There's really nothing else to say other than this is one of the dumbest things I've ever encountered in my life, and
English can be such a perfectly expressive language that has so many layers, and it's unfortunate that we get so many songs and just so many people that take it for granted, because it really is such a beautiful language, and I love English as a language.
With that being said, like how much do lyrics come into play when you are like reviewing an album?
It absolutely does, but I do think, because there's an interesting balance when I'm talking about pop music, I can't compare that to the likes of, let's say, an incredibly deep emotional album such as Lord's Melodrama. That's a perfect example of a really poignant lyrical album. And while it's technically a little more pop, it's not mainstream pop. I feel like to tackle an artist like Ariana Grande, just to throw one out there, you have to look at it slightly different, because obviously a lot of pop music doesn't have the most deep and intricate lyrics. But that being said, it doesn't mean that they can't have a perfect grasp of how to craft a pop song, to pull an artist who I think does. Amy Shark, her most recent release, I'm not sure if it's one that you checked out.
No.
She's a smaller artist, but she definitely has that mainstream pop sound.
I'll check her out.
But she has a way of perfectly crafting a pop song while the songs aren't really saying anything too deep or interesting, yet she knows how to craft it and still be interesting despite the lyrics' lack of substance.
So Noah, as you know, on this podcast, we're going to be just in-depth discussing albums and artists. So are there any albums or artists you want to cover in the future?
As in, like, older albums that we're discussing on the podcast?
I'm still, the way I have it envisioned is like it's going to be like the first episode, I want it to be The Wall, just because it's such a deep album in very many ways.
Right.
So it's I'm 13 and I'm edgy, but to say deep, but you know what I mean. So I guess you could say really anything, mostly albums, but like any artist, maybe not a specific album, but like that you want to cover one of their albums.
I think to cover would it would be really fun to cover a very mainstream answer, but "Welcome to the Black Parade" by My Chemical Romance. It would be it. I feel like a lot of the answers to this question would all be very mainstream,
Mm,
but I feel like they're mainstream for a reason because they're absolute classics
yeah.
and have so many layers. So I feel like that'd be a great one. Definitely, The Wall. Whatever. If that's the first episode, I would like to be on that episode.
Yeah. We've already talked privately about your love for The Wall.
Yes, it's. I would love to be on that or on that episode. I don't know. Nothing else is necessarily coming to mind, but those two would be both very fun.
Okay. Okay. Well, you guys will be seeing more of Noah in the future. So now we are going to talk to the next person that we're going to talk to. See you there.
Okay, guys, we are back again with another guest for this episode 0 of the podcast. We are here with Kyle Schiebel, owner of the YouTube channel Track by Track, or Track X Track, whichever you want to say it. And yeah, so Kyle, what do you do on your YouTube channel? Let people know what you do.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Sam. I appreciate it. I've been watching your channel for a while now too, and it's great to be on here with you. So for Track by Track, what my YouTube channel is designed to be is what the kind of the tagline that I use is to say it's music reviews, news, and commentary. So predominantly, I do a lot of album reviews. Mostly rock and roll stuff. And then also when there's news about upcoming albums, I'll usually try to do a short video to let people know about that for interesting stuff. And then commentary is where I'll do some videos that are kind of my thoughts and opinions about topics that are related to music, like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductions or declining sales of CDs as people go more and more towards streaming. So just a lot of the stuff that's interesting to me, and I hope that other people like to tune in and hear some of those points of view as well.
Interesting. And I thought about telling you this before, and I wanted to make sure I told you this. And I'm not trying to, flatter you or anything, but I just want to say with your branding and your stuff, music, news, reviews, and commentary, I've always respected you a lot because you are very strong with your brand and you're very clear to the point. Your videos aren't too long, and I've always respected you because you do a great job at what you do.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I think that one of the things that's really important for making good content, no matter whether it's on YouTube or anywhere else, is that you put the work into it. You plan and try to deliver quality. So I try to be very consistent about the things that I do on the channel, and yeah, you'll notice that the branding that I use in the logos and graphics are all really consistent and things like that. So I put a lot of effort into it. So I'm glad that's resonating for you.
Yeah, it is. I wish I could do the same thing as you did, but I'm always changing. I've only been doing YouTube for hardly a year now, and I've gone from really, really very poorly done like music vlogs kind of stuff, random music videos, to full-on music reviews. I've changed my logo probably 4 times in that time space. So yeah, I'm trying to be more consistent, but I'm always changing, and that's a problem I'm trying to fix.
Well, part of it for me was that I started out with a website and doing more of just a traditional blog and doing the same things where it was reviews and commentary and news and things like that. So when I decided to start up on YouTube, I really kind of carried over some of the same graphics and things like that I was using for the blog. So it helped that I had a lot of that ready to go a while before I started on YouTube.
Yeah, it definitely did. You should be proud of what you've created because I really respect it, and I'm sure a ton of other people do. But moving on from that, let's go on to our next question as I'm sipping some hot cocoa from my Pink Floyd mug. Um, let's talk about your musical taste. What are some styles that you tend to lean towards? What are some defining artists in your life? Give me the rundown.
Well, like I said, I predominantly am a rock and roll fan, and have been for a long time. But I do like all genres of music. So, but when you talk about what are kind of the defining artists for me, I was a teenager during the '80s. And so a lot of the new wave music that was coming out then, particularly the alternative new wave music, had a big impact on me then. So you're talking about, Depeche Mode or The Cure, New Order. Those were big bands for me during that time period. And then the band that really kind of opened my eyes to what music could really be beyond what you heard on the radio is a band that you just mentioned, and that's Pink Floyd. I think when I heard Pink Floyd, the album that came out when I was a teenager was A Momentary Lapse of Reason.
Mhm.
And I was so blown away by that album, by how just the production on it and all the sounds and how it all interweaved with the, David Gilmour's incredible guitar playing and the
Oh yeah.
incredible synth work. And I was so blown away by that album. But then I talked to some classmates who are older than me, and they're like, "Well, have you heard Dark Side of the Moon?"
Uh,
I said, no, I've seen the cover, so I know what it is, but I've never listened to it. They're like, dude, if you were blown away by Momentary Lapse of Reason, you've got to go hear Dark Side of the Moon.
uh-huh.
And so I did, and he was right. It totally changed my life. It was one of those things where I was like, oh my God, this is what music should be about. And obviously after that, I dug into everything that Pink Floyd had done, but it really expanded into so many other bands and so many other genres, and listened to music in a whole new way as a result of that. So definitely would say that Pink Floyd is my favorite band, and definitely one of the most influential bands on my music listening.
Good answer. Good answer. I love Pink Floyd. They are. I've just been digging into, of course, the classics like Dark Side of the Moon, The Wall, and then found a very good liking to Animals and Wish You Were Here, and all those albums, those classic albums. And I've fallen in love with them as time has grown on, and they have also been a huge influence on me.
Yeah, those albums that you just listed, they were on this incredible streak during the 70s, because you got Dark Side of the Moon coming out in 1973, and all the way from there, that run that they had from Dark Side to Wish You Were Here and Animals and The Wall, those four albums are just such monumental records, and just so influential on me and so many other people, and just darn near perfect albums, and definitely four of my favorites of any kind of all music. Just love those albums.
They're so phenomenal. That's definitely something to save for later episodes of the podcast. That's Pink Floyd is definitely a band that would be great to dig into. And you said that you were into that kind of '80s kind of synth wave, synth pop kind of thing, and so you'll like hanging out with Noah from SMEB Reviews, who's also going to be on the podcast. He loves that kind of music too.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I was a keyboard player when I was younger, so I really wanted to be able to do those types of sounds, those types of music, and never turned into anything, but definitely something that I always had you were either a guitar player or you were a piano player, and so since I couldn't play guitar, I always wanted to try to find a way to do something with keyboards that was just as cool and rocked as much. And I know you're a guitar player, so
Oh yeah.
Good for you, and keep up with that, because it's something I wish I could do.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm sure the beginning of this question might be pretty basic for you to answer, but I want to talk about your collection and your how you've built that, because that's a lot of stinking music. So how
Yeah,
did you start collecting that?
I think that part of it is that part of it's a sickness, right?
Uh-huh.
It's the collector's mentality. It's the when you do something, you want to go all the way with it, or
Uh-huh.
if you're gonna buy something, you want to have all of it. And so when I started to get into music during the 80s, the CD wasn't really taking off quite yet. Hadn't really come out yet, so I was buying a lot of cassettes, and so I had several hundred cassettes at the time of music before CDs really started to come out. And so once I had my first CD player, and that was around 1988, I think. Then I switched over to CDs and picked right up from there. Where not only was it then okay, every album that comes out now I got to buy it on CD, but I also need to go back and try to replace all of the good cassettes that I had with CDs. So Pink Floyd we were just talking about.
Yeah.
I had all of the Pink Floyd albums on cassette, everything from The Piper at the Gates of Dawn all the way up through The Momentary Lapse of Reason. So it's some of the collections and stuff like Works and Relics, all that I had on cassette. So there's like a dozen things, and I had to go out then, and now I had to get all of those on CD too. So that was a lot of stuff to get going on. And so really, I've been building my CD collection for 30 years, and so I've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 CDs. So,
that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah,
but it's a hobby that I love. No, that's something I love. And, I'm very organized. You've seen them in the backgrounds of my videos. Everything's alphabetized, and everything's in a database. So if I need to look something up, I always can. When I go shopping, I pull up the database on my phone if I'm looking at used CDs, because sometimes I can't remember if I own something or not. Inevitably, I know, right? And with used stuff, it's not a big deal, because if I buy something for $2 used, and then I get home and find out, oh crap, I had that. It's just $2. But you don't want to do that if it's something that some rare thing that you find in a store. You're like, oh hey, here's this CD that I think I need, and it's like $15. I don't want to spend $15 and get home and find out I already had a copy of it. So, but I've done it.
I have an interesting question to ask you. So, how do I phrase this? So, in your videos, when you review something, almost all the times that I've seen, you have had the physical copy, like a CD, and you had a CD of the album. So, I guess I think about this kind of a bad question, but like, was it ever a conscious decision to start ordering them on CDs, or do you like having it as a prop?
Well, as a collector and a music fan, I want to own them. I do want to have them, and anything that I'm going to review on my show is going to be something that I was interested enough to buy it. So in most cases, I keep a calendar of all the new releases that are coming out, and I pre-order stuff. And most of the time, those albums are going to be showing up on release day in my mail. So I'm going to get it the day it comes out. But I'll also spend time, like during the day before I get home from work or something. I'll listen to it streaming on Apple Music. So usually on the day an album comes out, my first time listening to it is going to be online. It's going to be streaming it. And probably the first several times I listen, it's going to be that way on my phone with my headphones or in my car. And then when I get home, I'll have the CD and I can crack that open, look at the liner notes, and read the lyrics that way, and listen to it in my music room. And so I listen both ways and spend some time with it before I actually do the review. And so it varies how many times I'll listen to something, but pretty much just about everything that I do review, I do have a physical copy of. There's a couple of things from last year that I reviewed that I don't own yet. And I say yet because I do fully intend to get the CDs for them. But for the most part, I do buy everything that I review.
That's an interesting thing to me, because if I'm being completely honest, this will maybe take a little bit of credibility away from me, but I only really intensely started listening to music like 2 years ago. So like, of course, I was listening to radio hits and stuff, and I always had a love and appreciation for music, but a very kid-like. Like, I didn't ever listen to albums, and I just listened to the same song over and over again because that's what kids do. And when I started listening, it's through streaming, through Spotify. So, like, uh, so it's interesting to see somebody who, like, collects all the CDs, and you have it on a physical copy of everything, you almost everything you listen to. So yeah, that's interesting to me.
Well, part of that is just kind of old habits die hard, right? So I've been buying CDs for 30 years, and so this is just the way that I've always done it, and it's not something that I'm looking to quit doing just because I can listen to everything streaming, and I do. I still enjoy the collecting aspect of it, and that brings joy to me, right? But let's also keep in mind, there's generational differences. So for your generation, owning a physical album has never really been as important because for the most part, you've always had access to these things online, digitally. And so there's never been a necessity for you to necessarily own the CD or to own the vinyl because you still had access to that music through Spotify or Apple Music or Pandora and things like that. So that's a different thing. But I think something that hasn't changed is I think that everybody goes through a similar musical discovery as they get older, because I was just like you. I was listening to when I was younger, when I was in grade school and middle school, I was listening to whatever was on the radio and whatever happened to be on in the car when I was driving with my parents or something. And it wasn't until I was a teenager that I started to take control and ownership of the things that I was listening to. And I think that that's still what happens today. Although probably because of digital, you have access to so much more at a younger age than I ever could have. So for you to say, you've only been seriously listening to music for a couple of years, I think that's totally natural, because I think that's what most people would do, is that, I was right around your age, I think, when I really started to pay attention to music and to think, wow, there's so much more to this than just these hit songs I hear on the radio. It's much more complicated than that. So I think that's very common what you're talking about.
And kind of just in the age of streaming, like, I guess if you started younger, say you were like 10, and you started using whatever money you had or your parents gave you to go out and buy CDs, you'd have to buy so much music to, like, know the artist before you. But now with streaming, I pay what I would pay for one CD for an entire month of content. So I can, anytime I'm like, well, who's this artist? I've never heard of them, but I know they're from the 60s. Well, I'll go check them out and listen to a couple of their records and, see what's going on there. It's a lot more easily accessible to just do that than it was back then.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think that, similar to you said, we could talk for an hour just about Pink Floyd. I think we could talk for an hour or more just about what is the impact of that on musical discovery and the way that we develop relationships with music. Because when I was younger, my generation didn't have that all you can eat, all access to whatever music. You're right. We had to spend $15 to buy a CD, and that was it. You didn't go and say $15 and I got all of Pink Floyd's music for $15. You just got one album. And so the value that we place on that music was, I think, very different than the value that today's generations, and not just today's generations, but all music listeners, there's been a paradigm shift in music listening, and it's evident in the way that CD sales are declining and that vinyl sales have exploded the way they have. Is that people are valuing music in a very different way. And I'm not sure that that's a good thing, because I don't think that the music matters as much to people when they're paying $15 to get anything and everything, and there's no risk involved. You didn't have to risk anything to stream that album. But if I go to the store and I pay $15 for that CD that's 45 minutes long, and I get home and I put it on and I think, oh, this sucks. I still spent $15 on it, right? So maybe I'm more likely to say, well, I paid my money for it. I'm going to listen a couple more times and see if I can figure this out. And maybe I come around to it. But online, when you're streaming everything and you can go click and change to something completely different, I'm not sure that the value is the same to the listener, or that the urgency for you to truly absorb it and understand it is there. And I think that we're all guilty of that. At doesn't matter how old you are in the streaming, musical economy. It's so easy to just sample something and not give it your full attention the way that you would if you actually invested real money in that same product.
And that's leads nicely into a question about your collecting and how you pre-order CDs. Like, what happens if you say in 2016 I'm going to order the Corey Feldman record, and of course that's absolute and utter garbage. And so, like, do you? I guess I guess you can't, because if you're ordering it online. But like, if you don't like something, do you just still stuff it away in your collection? But or do you just stuff it in your collection, or do you take it back or whatever?
Well, I don't get rid of anything. But one thing is that if I'm going to buy something, if I'm going to order something, if I've got something on my list of upcoming releases, chances are it's an artist I'm familiar with, that I already like well enough that I'm going to buy whatever they put out, and hopefully I'm going to like it. With new artists, I'm probably not going to do that. I'm probably going to stream it first and see if I like it, and after that, if I dig it enough, then it might be something that I'll end up buying, and that'll be something where I don't actually buy the physical CD the day it comes out. So that's something where I'd have to actually catch up on it, and that's what happens to me. I think is that so the CDs that I'm like behind on, that I haven't bought yet are the artists like that. So, for example, Priscilla Renee is a new artist that came out last year, and I ranked her at number 2 on my top 10 of the year, and I thought her album was phenomenal. But I had no idea who she was when she came out. I was seeing some buzz on some of the other music blogs, and she was getting some good reviews, so I thought, I need to check this out. And I was blown away by it. But it wasn't an album that I pre-ordered. I waited until it came out, then I streamed it, and just fell in love with it. I don't own that. I haven't bought that on CD yet. And the main reason for that is just because there's so many things coming out every week that I already have on my list of things that I've got to order from bands that I like, that I know, that that one just ended up being one that I streamed it a lot and never got around to actually buying it. So it is one that I'm feeling like probably in the next few weeks I'm going to go ahead and order it, just because I want to catch up with it, because it was such a great album. And I'd be proud to have it in my collection and to support an artist like that, a smaller artist like that, by buying their music.
For me, going back to what you said earlier about people devaluing music, I guess I'm kind of guilty of it, because I collect most of my stuff on vinyl, and then some of the stuff is on CD, but mostly on vinyl. And like, for an example, I just picked up "The Stranger" by Billy Joel, because I've fallen in love with that album, and part of it isn't even like the listening value or just having that ability to listen to it on, I guess, like in a physical setting. It's more about just having it and like using it almost like a decoration for me sometimes. But that's an album I've been playing nonstop on vinyl. So, and it's way more to me satisfying than just listening to something on streaming. There's a lot more connection to something when you pop it in the record player, pop it in the CD player, and you spent your hard-earned money to get it, and so you're gonna, I think, subconsciously automatically enjoy it more because you worked for it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that there's definitely more of an emotional attachment to a physical product, and vinyl in particular does a great job of creating that physical thing for you to have that you can associate with the music. Because the truth of the matter is, like you said, you don't need to own that vinyl to listen to that album. You can stream Billy Joel's "The Stranger" on all of the streaming services, and it is an
Yeah.
incredible album, no matter how you listen to it. But to have that 12-inch by 12-inch vinyl package, and maybe it's got a cool gatefold, and it's got the
Yeah.
the sleeves that pull out with the lyrics and things like that. I mean, that's awesome. And CDs don't still don't do as good a job. I mean, sometimes we get some cool packaging with those, but vinyl definitely does a terrific job of giving you something really cool to physically own. And then you get like colored vinyl and things like that. And it's definitely something where the physical component um, is very well done in the case of vinyl. But the flip side to that is that they've recognized that vinyl is sort of this luxury thing now. It's evolved into this luxury music item, and now it costs you
Oh,
4 times as much. If you want, how much did that cost you? You must have paid at least $20 for that vinyl.
see, that's where you haven't found out yet that I don't do that very much unless I, feel it's worth it. I go dig in record stores, cheap sections, and I look at their newest used items, and I got Billy Joel's "Stranger" for $8, I think. So I don't buy things,
And
like
so you got
fresh
that
much.
used. You bought a
Yeah, I
used
got that
vinyl.
used.
Shocking to me. Shocking that used vinyl sells for $8. That is ridiculously high, and that is just part of what's going on with vinyl right now. Is that suddenly records that 10 years ago would have sold for $1 are selling for $8, and that's not your fault. That's what's going on with vinyl, is that it's turned into this huge thing where if you want to get a used copy of something, it's going to cost you as much as a brand new CD would.
Oh yeah.
Or if you want to get the new 180 gram, special printing of that
Yeah.
album, it's going to cost $30
Oh yeah.
in a 2018 pressing. So $30 for that vinyl versus $8 for it on CD. That's quite a premium that you're paying to have that, and obviously millions of people are willing to do that.
Oh yeah, but the thing is, I will be honest. Most of the stuff I buy is like a $1 or $2. Like I got, and this is part of me is like almost. Now this sounds stupid, but just like doesn't even want to buy it out of principle. But geez, got Jimi Hendrix. What's it called? Electric Ladyland. Just the other day for $5. I'm like, how is that selling for $5? It's a pretty long record, and so like I don't understand why people devalue music and would sell that back. That had to be sold back, and so it's kind of a shame that
Yeah.
it's become so cheap. Like I mean, I've gotten so many Yes records for $2, but I came out because I got a Yes record for $2, so I guess I'm reaping the benefit in some way.
And good for you that you're able to, right? And I agree with you. I mean, whether it's vinyl, whether it's CDs, if I go to the store and I find a used copy of, a classic album, if I find a used copy of Jimi Hendrix Electric Ladyland on CD for $2 or $3, yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, who the heck got rid of this?
Mm.
Why did somebody not keep this? This is something you should buy it and you should never let it go. And so it's always amazing to me. Now, for me, I've got 5,000 CDs, so I go to the used stores and half the stuff I flip through I already own. But if I find a copy of the Joshua Tree by U2, I find them in almost every used store I go to. I'm like, the Joshua Tree, who lets that go? I mean, that's an incredible album. Everybody should have it in their collection. There's no reason for this to be sitting here on a shelf in a used store for $3 or $4. So I see that all the time. And like you said, on vinyl, it's shocking to me too that some of those things would be out there, and that's why in the case of something like The Stranger, they're charging $8 for it, because they know it's that good. They know that it's worth it, even though 10 years ago, people would have been like, why would I buy this on vinyl when I can get it on CD? So, but that's just the way things have changed.
It's so crazy. It's less, I guess, unfortunate when it's somebody like U2. Those guys have stinking made their money. But like, if it's some smaller artist, like I'll come across a bunch of smaller artists that I guess are critical darlings, as some people would say, that I've reviewed, and I'll come across them in the cheap section, and I know that like they're not making what some people would be thinking of millions or hundreds of millions. But, you know, it's kind of like sad because it's like, well, I guess they got their money in some way, but it's still probably not enough.
Yeah, and of course, now that things have changed with streaming and digital, and there's all this debate about whether or not artists are getting paid, how much they should be paid for music in a digital realm. It's all, you know, at one time everybody's like, oh, the record companies are evil. And then now we have streaming and everybody can put all their music out. It's like, well, they're still getting screwed over. They're still not getting as much money as they should. You know, if you go and you stream somebody's album, they're going to get like half a penny because you listen to it.
Oh yeah,
that's just crazy.
Do you know who Rick Beato is?
I've heard the name, but I couldn't tell you.
He's a YouTuber. He does the like what's it called? He's a music YouTuber, and he does the "What Made This Song Great" thing. But he did an interview with a metal band that I follow. I'm not a big fan of, but I follow them, called Periphery, and they have probably all considered probably a fan base of 500,000 people. I mean, for some artists, that's like nothing. Taylor Swift, you know, gets that in 5 minutes, but like that's still a very large amount of people. And they say their guitarist said that that's not even like the way they make their money is barely enough to pay for their tour. And they don't make even much money from their tour. They have to support themselves by other means, like selling their personal amps, personal guitars, and doing brand deals and stuff like that. But they don't actually make their money from 500,000 people listening to their music monthly, and that's just so mind blowing.
Yeah, I think that's pretty typical. Is that most artists, even the big artists, they make a lot of their money, most of their money, maybe. On touring, on playing all the live shows, because that's where they get to keep most of the money that comes in. Whereas when they're streaming or selling vinyl or CDs, they're getting a very small percentage of that. You know, you have some artists that are semi-independent who have found a way to be successful and still keep ownership of that. Nine Inch Nails is a great example of that, where you know, Trent Reznor pretty much self-releases all of his albums now. He'll partner with a record company, but he owns all of it. And so, you know, he goes out and puts a record out, and he makes so much more money off of selling that record than any other artist is going to, because all those other artists have got to pay off a record company and promotional stuff. And so, you know, it's great that he was able to build his career to the point where they were popular enough to where they can say, you know what, we're going to control all of this. But most artists don't have that luxury.
Tool does that. The Beatles did it for a while. I'm still not sure why they did it. They're another band who has definitely made their money, but like there's a rising artist doing that, and well, I stand with the cause. It really makes me hard for me to listen to their music, but you know, I guess in the grand scheme of things, I don't matter that much to them.
Well, and you know what's interesting about the Beatles, of course, is that in the early days they were signed to a record company, and they didn't own their music. And I'm not sure that I can't remember if Paul McCartney was able to successfully buy back his catalog or not, or if the Michael Jackson estate still owns it. I'm not sure, but that's why later in their career they started Apple Records, is because they're like, you know what, from here on out we want to own it and control it, so that, you know, moving in the future we get to keep it instead of having to have the record company holding on to it. And that's another reason why you see a lot of artists, a lot of legacy artists, who will go back and re-record their biggest hits in acoustic versions or just brand new studio recordings, things like that, because they don't own the originals. And now that they're 20 years, 30 years into their careers, they're able to negotiate contracts for the new music that they make where they can own it all, but they don't own their best. They don't own the hits that made them popular. And so that's where they'll go and they'll say, oh, we're going to record an acoustic album of all of our hits. And they'll make so much more money off of that acoustic album that'll sell far less than their greatest hits album would. But because they actually own it and they own the rights to it, they'll get paid so much more for it. And that's just crazy.
Yeah, it is. Well, let's end this puppy. Kyle, thank you for coming on. Plug your stuff. Tell people where they can find you.
Well, for the most part, I always tell people to find me out on YouTube, Track by Track. It's Track X Track, like you said at the beginning of the show, on YouTube. But you'll also find me on Twitter, Track X Track. And also Facebook, it's Track X Track Music. And then trackxtrack.com is the website. I don't update it as often as I should, but everybody should check it out on YouTube, though, for sure.
Okay, so yeah, go do all that stuff, and I'll have, I guess, links to the description to everybody. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Kyle. Let's move on to the next artist.
Okay, so we are here with Garrett of Young Entertainment Specialist, short for Yes, or Yes, short for Young Entertainment Specialist. So Garrett, what do you do on your channel?
Well, my channel, right now, a good chunk of my channel does revolve around music reviews. Seeing as that's the thing that I kind of know most about. Seeing my channel is, as you said, Young Entertainment Specialist. It's not music specialists. The idea is I want to talk about all aspects of the the entertainment spectrum. And music just happens to be the one I have kind of more of a forte with. But I love talking about movies. I love talking about dance. I have videos where I do like cooking with a buddy of mine. And I do interviews with all kinds of people. I've got interviews with graffiti artists, MMA fighters, balloon gurus, anything that you can come up with, I want to talk about. But yeah, music reviews, that's kind of like 85% of my videos at the moment. Basically, the idea is I just want to talk about anything that is really awesome in the entertainment realm and trying to get out things that might be mainstream, could be underground, could be indie, could be anything. The idea is get the good stuff out there. And then occasionally you talk about some of the stuff that's not so great, but you got to talk about it because what's good is good and what sucks, sucks, stuff like that.
So on the movie aspect, so you said like you kind of are more, I guess, comfortable, more knowledgeable in music than movies. Do you see yourself in the future going more into movies?
Well, right now there's an app called Stardust. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Nope.
There's an app called Stardust. It's basically an app for people who want to review their thoughts on movies in 30 seconds. And it's pretty popular for moviegoers. I've gotten a few of my friends to get into it. And that's kind of like where I am. Like I will admit I am incredibly bad at reviewing movies. Not because I don't have valid thoughts, but because when I go into a movie, I go in there just wanting to have a good time. And I could say the same about music, but because I have so much more knowledge because I did grow up with a musical family and playing instruments and things like that, it's like I have an expectation at least. Like there's a level of respect that I hope that when I listen to music, it will satisfy per se. So, but in movies, it's just like I just want it to be entertaining, even if it's like a purposely so bad that it's good kind of movie. Like I just want to be entertained in that regard.
I have similar like. I'm so glad you mentioned Stardust because I am already planning out in my head what my reviews are because I'm I'm very opinionated, and I always want to get my opinions out. I don't want to just be sitting around thinking about them all day. And I'm like you, most knowledgeable in music, not in movies. I'm not, into the technical aspects of movies. I just know, okay, this movie is good because dot dot dot, and this movie is atrocious because dot dot dot. And that Stardust thing, hopefully I can get myself on there and just do little short reviews, because there's some movies I've been wanting to talk about, but there's not really a way to put them on my YouTube channel. So
Right. Well, after this week, I can send you the link and I'll get you started on it.
okay. So what are like some of your maybe musical influences, the key artists that have shaped your musical taste, that kind of stuff?
Oh boy. I mean, I could go on to my music evolution for hours. I kid you not, but I will not do that to you. So let's try to simplify it. I can honestly say that my family influenced me a lot. My grandpa loved he loved all of his children. My mom is the third of 13 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a big family, and they were all pretty musically talented. Mm-hmm. And then my mom decided to try and pass that along to me and my siblings. And so we all grew up playing piano. And then sixth grade, and I got really into saxophone. And that's what I played for a good chunk of my life. I even minored in it in college. Mm-hmm. And throughout that time, started really young in the 90s, got really into boy bands. When I picked up saxophone, I got really into jazz music. A lot of good saxophone players out there. I actually have a very odd taste for trumpet players. Like, I love saxophone players, but I really love listening to trumpet players, even though I would never try to convert myself into a trumpet player. I don't have the chops for it. I have to play a reed instrument. That's what I have to play. And let's see. Then, I seriously was in a jazzy funk for about 2.5, 3 years.
That's some good stuff.
Yeah, no. I loved being stuck in it, but it's like eventually you have to branch your tastes out a little bit. And then one day, somehow I end up on the channels of, MTV and BET, and I expand my mind into all these other realms, very specifically hip hop and R&B. So I get into those, and then gradually listen to more alternative rock, and it just keeps going on. But yeah, I listen to almost everything. Mm-hmm. I will listen to anything, but you have your preferences and taste. And now to talk about influences, I'll name a few that my parents raised me on and a few that I personally like. My parents raised me on Sting, Phil Collins, Fleetwood Mac. Let's see, anybody else? Those are the really big essential ones. And then in the jazz era, I listened to Miles Davis a lot. I did listen to some smooth jazz, which, is kind of, I don't know why, but some people think it's kind of like a controversial topic. You're either traditional jazz or you're smooth jaz.
I love smooth jazz. I grew up in the early 2000s and just listening to that stuff.
Yeah, no, I like both. So I'm like, I love traditional jazz. As long as it sounds good, I'll go for it. So in that regard, I like Mindy Abair, Paul Taylor, and Chris Bodie.
Good choices.
Yeah. Let's see, and then let's go mainstream. I said boy bands earlier, so I'm a big NSYNC fan. So therefore, I'm a big Justin Timberlake fan. I will admit I'm a pretty big Skrillex fan. I'm really into John Mayer. Actually, he is
that poster behind you.
Oh my gosh, yeah. John Mayer is one of my biggest influences lyrically, and if I seriously got into songwriting, I would want to look into him a lot. Just a few more, just to wrap it up. Angels and Airwaves, Sade, Tori Kelly.
Yeah.
Let's see. for the heck of it, I'll say T-Pain just because he got me into hip hop. But I think hip hop a lot differently now, especially that I got into b-boying or breakdancing. So I listen to a lot of old school hip hop and more break beats, as we call them these days. That's kind of the giant realm of most of my musical tastes. I'm sure I've left out so many, but I've named quite a few that have really shaped me. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a year ago, somebody asked me who my favorite artists were, or who were the key artists of my life that shaped my musical taste. I'd be like, this artist, and this artist. But now I'm just like, oh, I can't even. I don't even. It's too hard to contain the box for me.
Yeah, when you think of your musical journey, it's like, how could you narrow it down to so few? But I mean, eventually, at the end of your life, there are going to be a few that stand out. But you take them all in as you go and recognize, hey, that was a good moment in my life, and I recognize that my journey in musical taste is gonna not change necessarily, but it will continue to develop and evolve.
And you mentioned Phil Collins and Sting. Were you also into Genesis and Police?
Sort of. I kind of followed their solo careers a little bit more when I was growing up, but I did go back and listen to some of their music. But I can't say that I'm an expert during their band days. I would definitely say I would understand more about the Police than Genesis, but I do like both.
Are you more? Here's a controversial thing. Are you more into old Genesis or new Genesis?
I don't know.
Or later Genesis?
I don't know if I would have an actually good answer for that. So I would have to pass on that just because I don't know if I have an actual answer for that.
Yeah. I'm not the biggest Genesis fan, but like for me, it's kind of Selling England by the Pound era. I love that album. It's a good album. Moving on. So you mentioned breakdancing. You breakdance?
Yeah, I do that too. I am by no means a pro, but I started learning a little bit in high school. When I went to college, kind of took some of the after normal school hours, on-campus classes. A crew was formed. They eventually invited me, and so we went to a few competitions. We did a few school performances, and we just kind of chill. Yeah, being a part of a group like that is kind of just like another family. When you're good enough, everyone gives you a nickname. And let's see, what was it? Just like that aspect opened my eyes big time into old school hip hop. And I'm not like old school is better than new school or new school is better than old school. I'm just kind of like, I'm into whatever just sound. Again, I'm just into whatever sounds good. So there you go.
And that's at the most primitive and caveman-like level, the way that I think everybody should review music. It's like, does it sound good? It does or it doesn't, and why? That's pretty much how I like to see my reviews, that it's in its simplest form.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. I mean,
continue.
Yeah. You got to review music for what it is, not exactly to maybe what your expectations are or what you think the world's expectations are, but this is what it is. Do you enjoy it or do you not? It's basically what it is.
Mm-hmm. So what do you want to get out of your channel?
To be honest, see what kind of people I can influence with my ideology. Because if you've seen a few of my videos, and I don't necessarily have a traditional rating method. I don't really have a 1 to 10 or A+ to an F standard. Yeah. I have these little percentages that kind of guide my rating system. Mm-hmm. Really, the idea is like I don't. Not that I couldn't give like my personal subjective opinion of a grade, But my idea is I want to give a recommendation. So if I really like an album, or if I love it, I say, yes, I recommend this album. And if I really detest the album, I say, no, I don't recommend this album. So it's all about, like, if you were to ask me, do you recommend this album? I'd be like, yes, or yeah, or meh, or yeah, kind of all those things.
Okay, for our last question, I have a heavy hitting, double-sided question. What is one of or your definitive favorite album, and on the flip side, your least favorite, like your most negative rated, like people like this, and I can't do it.
Like of ones that I've reviewed currently?
I guess either or. I mean, if you haven't reviewed it, because you can't review everything, like just in general, I guess.
Okay. Well, I guess right now I'll let's see. Well, for both, I guess I'll go with ones that I've reviewed.
Uh-huh.
So, of ones that I have currently reviewed, the one that I'm probably the most excited for that you can find in my catalog on YouTube is the Casey Musgraves album that was released this year called Golden Hour.
It was a good album.
Yeah, I've never disliked country, but I was not raised on it.
Yeah.
And I can't necessarily say that is all traditional country music, but it has its roots in country. Mm-hmm. So I'll give it that. And I was just like shocked how much I fell in love with it, because I mean, it was so purely simple and I just loved it for that. Mm-hmm. And then, oh man, the album that I think everyone loves except for me is the Cardi B album. I hate that album. Oh my gosh. It is appallingly crap. That is a crappy album, and I can't believe it's nominated for Album of the Year. It's deplorably depressing. Oh my gosh.
Ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ling, got the answer. I agree, man. I agree. On both, like I didn't fall in love with Casey Musgrave Golden Hour. Some people like ARTV gave it the best album of the year, which I didn't think that for me. But like Invasion of Privacy, that's probably one of my second or third least favorite.
I'll say my privacy was invaded by that album.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Cardi B is just a reincarnation of Nicki Minaj, in my opinion. It's just like so
ratchet version of her. Like, I don't mind Nicki Minaj. I just recognize when she is, I guess, good, and then when she's just like, oh, she's doing her quote unquote thing.
Yeah, like that new album.
Yeah.
That was another bad low point in musical history.
Yeah. So yeah, that's as far as my reviews go. Those are pretty out there in the open, so those are open to check out.
Okay, yeah. So everybody, go check out Casey Musgrave and don't check out Invasion of Privacy. So yeah, thanks for joining me, Garrett, and you guys will be seeing more of him to come in the podcast.
For sure.
Okay, signing off to the next person.
Okay, guys, so now we're on to another host, and we are with Ryan of True North Reviews. Ryan, can you introduce yourself?
Hey, how's it going, everyone? I'm Ryan, and I'm really happy to be here today. Thank you, Sam, for having me on the show here. And yeah, I do reviews of music like all these other critics do. Me, I'm a little bit different. Not really. I'm Canadian, but that's probably the main thing going for me that makes me stand out. Yeah, I just keep up to date with new albums, new releases, do track reviews, album reviews, in the middle of doing list week right now, counting down some of the best and worst music of the year. And I'm just happy to be here.
Well, that's great, and I know you want to feel special because you're Canadian, but actually, another host of ours is Canadian too.
Oh,
You
really?
got competition, yeah.
Got competition.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
gonna have to fight for the scraps here. This isn't gonna be easy peasy, Ryan. Okay, so what is your musical taste? What did you grow up on? What do you lean towards? Favorite artist? That kind of stuff.
Okay, so growing up, I was constantly told by my parents that it's like, okay, this is like the best music of all time. It was like the Beatles, Rolling Stones, that kind of typical stuff that you get from the 60s. And then counteracting that, I had my brother show me some stuff by Green Day, and I really grew up on Green Day a lot and got into drumming through elementary school, got into a band through high school, and then once I was in high school, I kind of expanded my taste a bit because my friends got me into other alternative bands like the Black Keys, Kings of Leon, and then from there, really got into watching people review albums on YouTube, and then started getting into more of the critic kind of albums that they tend to like more than the general public. Checked out some of those a bit, like Father John Misty. He's usually someone who's seen as pretentious and all that kind of stuff, but I've really taken a liking to him, and from there it's kind of just branched out to just wanting to see what's out there and just willing to listen to really any genre, including country, jazz. There's a really great jazz album this year. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's by Sons of Kemet.
I have heard some of it, but not all of it.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. It like just dropped my jaw upon like pretty much every song.
I don't think my problem is there's a lot of albums that I don't cover, and other people say it's great, and I'm like, yeah, I recognize it's pretty good, but I, for some reason, never have a desire to actually like fully listen to it, and I've been trying to fix that, but I find myself trying to catch up on, like, I'm only 14, and so I'm going through record stores being like, oh, Styx, okay, Kansas, okay, Pink Floyd. I need to catch up on all this stuff. I've missed a lot, so I've been trying to go back and make sure I have my bases covered in that. So what are some of your like current favorite artists?
Right now, person that I'm listening to the most, if I pull up my iTunes here, most recently listening to a lot of Judas Priest, actually, like ever since Firepower. I thought was a really great album this year, so that one really stuck out to me. I've been playing it a lot. Sorry, I just finished recording my worst of 2018 songs, so all the ones that are stuck in my head are the worst songs, so like don't want to really be thinking about that as I do this video, like do this recording. But I've been getting into Said the Whale. They're an indie rock band from Vancouver.
I'll check them out.
A little bit of The Doors. I've always been a fan of The Doors.
Just picked up one of their albums, yeah.
And other than that, I would say Daft Punk. My roommate's a big fan of them, and for the longest time I was never really into them, but he kind of converted me on that.
For me, the artist that I've been like kind of like really sticking out, and I've been intrigued and going back into their discographies is like Stevie Wonder is definitely one. I know you mentioned him before we started recording. I have really taken a liking to In Square Circle, like Overjoyed, very likely my favorite song of all time, and then Whereabouts is great too, and Part-Time Lover, of course, and then Elton John, not as much, but like still been liking his stuff. Billy Joel, really liking his stuff. Michael Jackson,
Nice.
He's a little bit of an outlier in there, but still been liking his Thriller. That's such a great album, in my opinion. I think it's one of the best pop albums ever released. But yeah, those are some good artists I've been really enjoying getting into.
Yeah, and definitely with Thriller, one of those culture-changing, culture-defining kind of albums that just like took everything by storm. And it was in that time where it was just like revolutionizing MTV, the music video, that kind of thing. So yeah, hands down one of the best albums of all time.
I think we need to cover that album someday. Yeah, I think that's an interesting discussion because like "Wanna Be Starting Something" is another one of my favorite songs of all time. That's a really great song, so fun, and like the way that he not only blended genres on that album, like he dabbled in some rock, like not heavy, but still qualifies with "Beat It." That riff is great, and just like I feel like he matched like the perfect level of, okay, I'm gonna try new things out, but I'm also gonna make some really catchy mainstream sounding pop songs that are very accessible, but at the same time are trying out new things. And I think he did a fantastic job, and he's a very unique artist for his time. So to finish off, Ryan, what are some albums that you want to cover on the Criticast?
The thing that's coming to my mind right now isn't necessarily an album. It was something that came up in SMEB reviews, worst songs of the year. It was with XXXTentacion, his song "Sad," and he had an interesting take on it, and just being like, okay, well, obviously everyone knows that it's a pretty manipulative song, and how we can just say that it's X in the song. He was saying that he wants to threaten the fact that he might kill himself if this girl doesn't stay with him.
Yeah.
And I commented on that video, and I was like, yeah, and it's like, okay, we know that, but like maybe the song is meant to be like a starting point for a conversation for something bigger. So like there's other songs in the past that have become a hit, something like Foster the People's "Pumped Up Kicks." So like that song focuses on the fact that this person wants to shoot up the schools. Yeah, it's like a song that sounds pretty happy-go-lucky. And I don't know, certain songs that just sound happy and are catchy or poppy, but then the lyrics end up being very contentious and very just offensive, and any songs that can really talk about that. So like obviously much of XXXTentacion's discography, probably any of his albums would be of that nature, I guess.
Actually, I don't want to ask that question because then we'd be taking away content from maybe that episode. I think like when the format that I have kind of planned out, I feel like those like kind of conversations will be good for like the first 30 minutes, I guess, and then we can get into the album that we're specifically talking about. But like, say, here's a really weird example, but if we wanted to discuss like Ariana Grande's whole situation, maybe something that's not that we would, or maybe we would, I don't know, but like maybe discussing something like that, that's maybe not directly about the music, maybe it's kind of like secondhand, but we still want to talk about it. Maybe that would be something that we could talk about at the beginning half, and then we'd go into whatever album we were talking about.
So what specifically about Ariana Grande?
I don't know. That's just the only thing that came in my head.
Okay.
Jeez, I'm stupid. Thank you for joining us, and you guys will be seeing more of Ryan in the future. Let's move on to maybe the next host, if there is another host. I'm really not sure. Okay, so we are here with Ben of the YouTube channel, The Prog Geek. So Ben, introduce yourself to the future audience.
Hello, future audience. I'm Ben. I'm the Prog Geek, or at least I think I'm a prog geek. And many people will tell me I don't listen to this band or I don't listen to that band, but I'm pretty sure I'm a prog geek. And I have a YouTube channel where I review not just prog. So if you don't like prog, it really doesn't matter. I review everything from hip hop to jazz to rock, obviously, to prog, of course, to metal, to folk. Everything that I can find, avant-garde, experimental, electronic. And I'm pretty new. I've been on for about a month. I've been trying to get the channel up and running, and it's pretty fun. I like reviewing music.
So, as your name suggests, obviously you're into prog, but like, what are some specific, like, 5 bands that really define your taste in music?
So 5 bands. So like
Or artist.
Yeah. So 5 artists that describe or define my taste in music. So I fell in love with music through the band Supertramp, specifically the album Crime of the Century. And so that album has a lot of meaning to me. So Supertramp is definitely on the list. I love that power pop type, like really kind of fun, very orchestrated pop music. So that's one band. Another band would be definitely Opeth, as they kind of taught me the boundaries of music. And the fact is that there are no boundaries. And they also written some of the best music I've ever heard, including albums like Blackwater Park and even Pale Communion I really like, and obviously Still Life and Deliverance and Damnation. They've made fantastic albums, so definitely Opeth is another one. Another one would definitely be Yes, as they introduced me to prog. I never really liked the idea of songs being 10 minutes and let alone 80 minutes like I listen to now. But I never liked that idea. But then I listened to Yes, and it was the Yes album that started the whole thing. That actually boosted my love for music even more. So that's 3. Another one would be, I guess I would have to say the Beatles, because I know it's a classic one, but they kind of changed how I view well-written pop songs. They, it's different the way they write pop music, and I've always loved the Beatles for that. And I'm gonna have to go with probably Billy Joel, because I'm going off of like artists that really shaped how I listen to music. And Billy Joel he's the same, with like really intricate chord progressions, kind of orchestrated melodies, very not musical theater, but very in depth and almost progressive, but not really progressive. But I mean, yeah, so those are 5 artists.
So Ben, what is your review style preference? What do you like to do in your reviews that may be a little bit different than the standard music reviewer?
I guess I like to keep it pretty fresh, in the sense where I just kind of talk. I don't really cut things out. There's times when I've gotten an email on a review and I just go, what the hell is that? Like, I'll see it and like, because something's wrong with my email. I get really weird, like, spam emails. And so once I think it was for the Matt Corby review, or maybe not that one. It was a different one. And I was just sitting there and I got this email and it was like, you've won $1 million. And like this giant thing. And I was like, I knew it was a spam, but like, I was just like, what is that? And it's all in like random like letters and crap. And I was just like, so like, I try and keep things fresh, where like it's just me talking. It's like a conversation. And I also try and make sure that I cover everything that makes an album good. So am I looking at the production? Am I looking at the melodies? And if there's not melodies, if it's more of a rhythmic based album, am I looking at the rhythms? Am I looking at the experimentation? Am I looking at what the mix sounds like, which I guess goes into production as well, or more sound engineering? And am I looking at what the artist was trying to do? It's always about what the artist is trying to do, because if the artist is trying to make their music, I always complain about aesthetic over musical composition. It bothers me a lot, and I think that when I always try and make sure, is this artist just going for an aesthetic, or are they actually trying to write good music too? Because you can have aesthetic and good composition go with each other. They can coexist. So I just try and review things as they are. I don't really hide my feelings on things. I mean, a band has a band called Overhead gave me their album early, and I kind of hated it. No, I didn't hate it, but I mean, compared to other stuff, I was like, this is not good. Sorry, I don't know why I said I hate it. I didn't hate it. It wasn't great, but I just try and keep things fresh, and just like if people want to just hear me talk, then that's the place to go.
Okay, well, thank you for introducing yourself, Ben, and you guys, the audience who is currently listening to this intro to the podcast. You guys will be seeing him on a lot of future episodes. So let's move on to the next host. Okay, guys, so I'm so happy to have this episode finally almost finished after I'm done rambling on a bit, and this is the first episode of the podcast. Well, I guess episode 0. It's kind of a preview episode. Hopefully you got to know the guest. Hopefully you are excited for the first episode coming next Friday. I am so excited to be having this podcast finally up and running. I've been working in the branding, I've been working on the website, the social media, and just putting all the hosts and stuff together. I've been working on it for about a month now, and I thought this idea was very promising, and I've so far had a great time doing it. It's a lot of work, but it looks like it's paying off. I think you guys are really going to enjoy these podcasts coming soon when it's fully fleshed out and we fully have the idea running. It's got kind of like a revolving set of hosts, so you'll get to see new hosts every week. Some of the same, every week I'll be the one consistent host. I'll probably be on almost all the episodes of the podcast just because I I don't know, I'm doing a lot of work, and I'm always free and stuff like that, and I love putting my opinion into the world, so I'll probably always be on these, but I'm so excited I can't even express. Sometimes I get dry creatively and I come up with something new to do. That's how I started doing my music reviews, and now look where we are. I'm going to be doing this, and it's shaping up to be pretty good. So all the hosts, go down in the description. There's going to be so many links to all the socials for Criticast, all the socials and YouTube channels for every host here. Let me just list the host. Okay, so we got Noah from SMEB. Oh, sorry. Myself, Sam Bennett, on Twitter, at Sam Bennett, YT, all that stuff. It's already in the description. Then we have Noah from SMEB Reviews. Okay, his stuff is in the description. All our stuff is in the description. I shouldn't have to say it. Then we have Kyle, a Schiebel from Track by Track. We have Garrett from Young Entertainment Specialist. Yes, short for Entertainment Specialist. We have True North Reviews. We have Ben from the Prog Geek, and hopefully more coming soon. I'll try to get some people in there. But yeah, that's what we have for right now. So go check out all their socials. Go check out other projects. They're all great guys, and I'm all very happy to be working for them. And we've had a great time recording so far. So yeah, don't want to be too repetitious. Episodes every Friday. I'm pretty sure I'll try to have them out by 12 o'clock every Friday. So release date. So skip all the albums before I review them. After I review them, you can go listen to them, and then in the meantime, listen to the podcast. So yeah, episodes every Friday. Go follow all the socials for the podcast: Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Let's see, Anchor, which will then go to Breaker and Stitcher and all these other podcasting platforms. So yeah, we'll be seeing you guys next week on Friday. So yeah, 1 week from now, I'll be seeing you guys next time. Hopefully you are eager, just as eager as I am to start this incredible journey. Be seeing you guys next time. I'm stepping out of the Criticast.